It's now time for On the Line with Cheryl Wilkerson. The conversation will range from local dialogue to international. This show is meant to enlighten, inform, and to inspire. On the Line with Cheryl Wilkerson begins now.
Hello and welcome to On the Line. I'm your host, Cheryl Wilkerson. It is a Sunday morning. Thank you all for joining me. You know, Tuesday would have been my mother's birthday. And also, it's Valentine's Day. And to that end, of course, we couldn't just let this Sunday go by without bringing in an expert and talking about love and getting you all mushy and gushy and all that good stuff. But in the middle of all that mush and gush, we're going to talk about some serious issues, especially when it comes to our love. To that end, I welcome Dr. Erica Holmes to the program today. This lady has studied, and she has studied hard. She knows exactly what she is talking about. People have labeled her as a relationship coach, but she's so much more than that. And you're going to find out much more about her as this 30 minutes goes by. So, Dr. Erica, welcome to On the Line.
Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl. I'm so excited about, of course, talking about this topic. So thanks for having me.
All right, Dr. Erica Holmes, tell me quickly, who are you? Who are you, Dr. Erica? Who are you? How do you describe yourself?
Well, I'm many things, as most Black women are. But I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of California. I provide therapy. I work in academics as a professor, and one of my areas of study is love, relationships, attachment, and all of that good stuff. So I work with a lot of couples, helping them to find love and sustain love.
And people with an eagle eye and an ear there may remember you from being on television as well, correct?
Yes. So my husband and I were on season 5 of Holmes docuseries Black Love. So we were on season 5 and are often now recognized in public, which is kind of strange, but but it was a great experience.
And sometimes that's great, and sometimes that can be a bit much, right?
Right.
So first, let's get into it. How do you define Black love? And Dr. Erica, why are we hearing so much about that now? Did we hear those words in the 40s or the 60s or the 80s? Is it a catchword now? Why is it so popular?
Well, I think, your first question, like, how do I define Black love? I really think Black love and our connection is rooted in our history and our culture. And I don't think that Black love in its essence is any different from the love that any other people have. But what's happened in America is that our love has been under assault. And there's so many negative messages now about Black people, Black relationships, that we don't get married, that the fathers are not in the home or don't care. So much is propagated in the media that is really an assault on Black relationships. And so the reason I think this Black love movement is so amazing and so necessary is because the portrayals of Black relationships have been so negative for so long that many people have lost faith in finding love and sustaining love. So this idea of uplifting Black relationships, our hearts, right, the way that we connect, our softer side, I think is so important for especially for the younger generation, many of whom are disenchanted with the idea of marriage and long-term commitment because of those negative messages, and even maybe because of some of the things they saw in their own homes and their communities. So highlighting healthy, strong, committed Black love, Black families, Black relationships, I think is essential to our survival.
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm thinking of some young people within my family, and I've heard them say that they don't want to get married because they're young adults now. They say that because of what they have seen in their families. But does love conquer that feeling that they have early on? And do you think that they're saying that now, they wholeheartedly believe it, but do you think there's a chance that they could change about that?
Oh, most definitely. I think that they can change. I believe that, In psychology, we use the term attachment, and attachment refers to that inner connection that we have to others. And we are born to attach. We are born social creatures. Our first relationships to our caregivers and our parents, the foundation of that is attachment. That's the way that we thrive and survive. And so that need, it changes, but it doesn't go away. We don't need our partner, our long-term partner, in the same way that we did our parents. But that need for attachment and to be connected to others on a soul level, that does not go away. And I think that as young folks get older, that desire to be in a relationship, to be in a long-term relationship with someone who you can share true intimacy with, which intimacy is cultivated over time. Because intimacy, the foundation of intimacy, the foundations are trust and transparency. And that doesn't happen in fleeting moments. That happens over time and it's cultivated. And so the desire and the longing for that, I've found, increases as individuals get older. So there's most definitely a likelihood that that'll change.
I can already tell that I could talk to you for hours because you make me think. You make me think, and I have a zillion questions. So having said that about young people, when you find a person in their 50s or 60s and say they've always said their whole life, I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to get married. And true to their word, they haven't. They don't have that need for attachment that you just spoke of?
I think that, I think everyone has a need for attachment. And there are a lot of people who have said that they didn't want to get married, did not get married, and might not regret the decision not to get married. However, I have yet to find, I've been practicing for over 20 years, I've yet to find a person who doesn't long for companionship. And so companionship, marriage is one type of companionship, but that need and desire to be connected to someone. And so I know people who have not gotten married in their 60s and stuff, but they've been dating or companioned or connected to someone for 15, 20 years, even though they might not live together, even though they might not be married. It's like this is a person who's been in their life for this, and they can go on dates or they can travel together, or that's who they call. They come help fix the sink. So they do have a long-term relationship. It's just not one that is solidified by marriage.
If you're just joining us, I'm speaking to Dr. Erica Holmes, and we're doing this show in honor of Valentine's Day. It's coming up Tuesday, right around the corner. Can we talk about the five primary types of intimacy? I know you mentioned some of them. Can we talk about those a little in depth?
Sure. So most people kind of interchange sex and intimacy as if sex equals intimacy.
Why? Why do people do that? Why?
To me, in my work, it's like it's been reduced to the least common factor. It's the easiest. It's the low hanging fruit.
Okay.
For some, yeah, right. For some, it doesn't. Like, you can have sex without having true intimacy. So in some ways, it's easier because there's a surface level of vulnerability needed to have sex. However, true intimacy, if you think about intimacy, we like to say, into me you see. So true intimacy requires vulnerability and transparency, which for most takes a lot more work than having sex in this day and age. And so the other types of intimacy that are often left out are really, I talk about 5 other types in sex. Sex will be the 6th. But you have emotional intimacy, which is the sharing of your feelings, intellectual intimacy, which is sharing of your innermost thoughts, spiritual intimacy, which is sharing of that part of yourself that's connected to the divine. There's recreational and experiential intimacy, which is allowing others to be a part of your recreational journey and hobbies. And then there's physical intimacy, which is different from sex, in that physical intimacy is really just that touch and that physical connection to others outside of sex. And so and thinking about intimacy and the need for it in a sustained, healthy relationship, you have to cultivate whole person intimacy, not just the sharing of your bodies, but the sharing of your thoughts and your feelings and your spiritual sensibilities and those exciting new adventures that you go on. So those are the types of intimacies that take work and that are cultivated over time in a relationship.
And so they are cultivated over time. But when you have a couple and they'll tell you, oh, we got married after a month and we've been together 50 years, that means that they didn't cultivate it in advance, but they just made up their mind, or they had the determination. They did the work afterwards?
Right. So you don't have to have grown in all the areas of intimacy to get married. Mm-hmm. And truth be told, again, over time, you're talking about, in sustained, healthy relationships, having true emotional intimacy or intellectual intimacy or spiritual intimacy. That could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years into a marriage, even a marriage, when you feel settled and secure and completely grounded. So over time, it's not like, oh, you need to date for a year and a half or 2 years. No, it is these types of intimacies are cultivated throughout the relationship and should be kind of the work of the relationship over the lifetime of the relationship. Even when you hear people who, I see people who have been married 25 years and they want to get a divorce. Or you'll hear people talk about they're empty nesters, and now they're looking at each other like, who are you? Mm-hmm. And they, they're empty nesters, so they've been in it for 20, 25 years. Well, part of that is because they might have been having sex. Like, they could have sex through their entire relationship, but they're not cultivating those intimate moments, which are what sustains a relationship throughout the relationship. So cultivating intimacy is not an event that occurs. It's something that you have to work on and make a conscious effort to cultivate throughout the entirety of the relationship.
And so what are threats? Have you outlined some threats to intimacy?
Right. So, excuse me. Some of the practical things that are threats to intimacy. Practically time. You get busy. You have work, you have school, you have children, you have responsibilities. And so what happens is, like, we don't have time to sit down and have an intimate talk or to really talk about how we feel. And we don't have time to go on an adventure, or we don't have date night. So that's a threat to intimacy because, again, intimacy has to be intentional. We have to make time to cultivate that in our relationship. There are also individual threats to intimacy. So things that we bring in ourselves that threaten our ability to be transparent or vulnerable in the relationship. So, for example, past hurts, past relational trauma. Somebody cheated on me, so I'm more guarded in this relationship because, I don't know, it takes me a longer time to trust you, for example. So there are personal things that we bring into the relationship that can be a threat. Another threat to intimacy could be that we don't see it as important. We think as long as we're having great sex, then the relationship is okay. And we know that that's not true. And if you're in a sustained relationship, there might be times when you can't have sex. There might be medical reasons that you can't have sex. Someone might have to go away on a work trip and you can't have sex. So you have to see that you have to believe that it is important to be connected in different dimensions than sexual intimacy. So not seeing it as important or making it a priority is a threat.
You mentioned about someone might bring past hurts into a relationship. To level one, that seems normal, because if that's what I learned from this relationship, then I learned the lesson. So the lesson is going to go with me to the next relationship. But perhaps people, how do I want to say it? Perhaps people take that lesson to the extreme, and that's how they hurt the new current relationship.
Right. So they take it to the extreme, or they project the lesson or something that was unique to that last person they were dating onto this person. So the lessons that you learn, of course, every experience should teach us something. It should teach us something about others and about ourselves as well. But what we can't do is make others responsible for something someone else did to us.
You hear that line all the time in the movies, like, I'm not so-and-so, or, that's a famous line when somebody's doing that, right?
Right, exactly, because it's reality. Because many of us, the way that we internalize the lesson is that people are dangerous. And so that means everyone that we encounter, we have already in our minds that you're just like the last person, or you're going to do the same thing. I mean, we hear it all the time. Oh, all men cheat. Well, that's the perspective that you have, or the belief that you have. Then every man, whether he has that as his past history or not, begins to pay for the failures of others.
Mm-hmm. And so how does when one recognizes that's what they're doing, how do they go about changing that?
So one of the first or most important things is to take the lesson of the past relationship and also reflect on how your behaviors may have allowed, not that you're responsible for somebody else's behavior or any bad thing that's happened, but take ownership. The only thing that we can do is take responsibility for what we've done or did not do. So how do we learn to, for example, be more discerning? How do we learn to ask more questions? How do we learn to take responsibility for the things that occur in our life and to move in a different way?
And I would imagine...
From my perspective, that's like the first step, is taking our own ownership, not taking responsibility again for someone else's behavior, but us being empowered to say that we can impact or influence the ways that our relationships kind of turn out in the future.
Dr. Erica Holmes, that's who I'm talking to today. She's a relationship expert, and she's an author. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well. And looking at yourself and seeing what part you played in the relationship, I would imagine, Dr. Erica, that is pretty hard for some people to do.
Oh, it's very difficult, because when I work with people, and I work with a lot of women, primarily. I work with men mostly if they're coming in for couples therapy, but for a lot of women, when they first come in, if they're coming in for relational issues or after a breakup, the first few sessions, they just want to talk about him, and he did, and he. But the only person that I can work with in the room is the person who's in the room, which is you. Right. And the only person that you can change is you. So we can process and work through the pain of whatever betrayal or disappointment has happened. But I move towards talking about the development of relationships is a dance, right? It's like a dance. And so the relationship is co-created. And at any time, when you decide, you can decide that, you know what, I want to do the salsa. I don't want to do the cha-cha. But what happens is a lot of times we get caught up in the fantasy of what it could be, that we change our whole dance step just to try to make this thing work.
Wow.
And when it doesn't, we're mad at the other person.
When we are the ones that changed. Got it. Let's talk about intimacy boosters. What helps the intimacy? What elevates the intimacy?
Well, some of the things that elevate the intimacy, if I just start with the basics, seeing it as important as a couple, committing yourselves to prioritizing ways to connect every single day. So that we're going to prioritize, even if it's just a moment, a quick text just to say, thinking about you. Those little things that we do in the beginning of the relationship that are so important, and they make us giddy and they make us feel warm inside when we get that little text or, something like that. So prioritize, we're going to make this a priority. If we're living together or if we're married and we're in the same house, we're going to set the alarm for 5 minutes early. We're going to wake up and we're just going to cuddle in bed for 5 minutes before we jump out of bed and go about our day. So seeing it as a priority, making it a priority. Another thing to boost intimacy is to really focus on building an atmosphere of trust in the relationship. Again, intimacy cannot happen without vulnerability. And for there to be vulnerability and transparency, there has to be trust. I have to believe that if I share my innermost thoughts, my innermost feelings, my pains, and my joys, that you will be there to support me, to comfort me, to hold it, to hear it, just to be a listener on the other end. So cultivating an atmosphere of trust. And the way that you do that is you start off small. A little small thing, saying, how was your day? And really stopping to listen because you're invested or interested in hearing how their day was, right? Sharing those little ups and downs, joys and pains that occur throughout the day. Another way to build intimacy is to calendar it, right? To calendar. Some couples have decided now they have date nights, and sometimes date night can be bumped off the calendar because of other events or things that happen. But calendar time that you're going to spend together, plan days, things to do every day that you can do again, like cuddle in bed or kiss on the forehead or text. Plan things that you can do weekly, like a weekly date night. Plan something that you can do monthly, which might be a longer event, like a Saturday where you're like, we're spending one Saturday a month just with each other. And then plan bigger events maybe throughout the year. Twice a year you go on a vacation for 6 or 7 days, or you take 6 or 7 days part of your vacation, and you just spend it together investing in the relationship. So those are like 3 things that you can do, plan to do, to focus on and prioritize intimacy in your relationship.
Let me ask you this. When couples are having a disagreement, is there such thing as fighting fair, or is that something that you just heard in the media and it doesn't exist? If it does exist, what does it mean?
Oh, fighting fair is most definitely something that exists, and it is one of the most important things in a healthy relationship. The way that I look at relationships and the health of a relationship is not how well people get along when things are going great, but how they handle each other when there's conflict. That, to me, tells me more about the health of the relationship than how happy and go-lucky you are when everything is going well and you two agree on everything. Mm-hmm. There's this, for the sake of time, I won't go into it, but a well-known couples researcher, there are a couple of researchers who research couples, and what they found was that happy couples and unhappy couples don't disagree, or unhappy couples don't have more disagreements than happy couples. What they found is those couples who report happiness and couple satisfaction have the same amount of disagreement, but it is how they handle the disagreements. The disagreements aren't personal. So things that are, so when we fight fair, they've identified that the things that should not come into your conflict or your argument, or sometimes we call it an intense fellowship, there shouldn't be contempt, right? Oh, you make me sick. Ooh. I hate you. Ooh. Right? There should not be criticism. You always do this, or you never do that, or you're just like your mama, or you're just like your daddy. So there shouldn't be criticism. There shouldn't be stonewalling. And stonewalling is, I'm not going to talk about it. Right? I don't care.
Okay. So, Dr. Erica, so if you're in a disagreement, and one person is the type of person that needs to cool off, and they walk out and they say, "Okay, I'm just going to go cool off." Is that good or is that bad? Because a lot of times the other person doesn't want you to go cool off, and they want to continue whatever you're talking about.
Yes. So that is called taking a time out. And that is most definitely important if the conversation is getting heated, or if a person is getting flooded and overwhelmed. That's most definitely important. And that's different from stonewalling. Okay. When a couple, so when a couple takes a time out, that is an agreed upon amount of time. And that doesn't mean, because of course, oftentimes the dynamic in relationship is that you have a distancer and a pursuer. So often the distancer is like, I need a moment to myself, and the pursuer is like, no, we got to settle this right now. Well, fighting fair means that the couple is able to respect the wishes of the other. So that means that the pursuer must respect that the distancer needs a little time to calm down, for things to settle down so that they can actually talk level-headedly. The distancer has to promise that we're going to come back and talk about this in an hour, or we're going to talk about this within a 24-hour period, that we're going to be able to sit down and we're going to talk about this. Would 3:00 tomorrow afternoon be better? Would it be good for you?
Okay.
So the distancer gives that person time, and the pursuer gives that person time, and the distancer makes an appointment to pick this conversation back up within 24 hours.
I get it. This 30 minutes goes by so fast, and before it ends, I want to make sure that we tell everybody about your books. You sat down and you wrote a workbook, Dating with a Purpose, A Single Woman's Guide to Escaping No Man's Land. Why did you write that, Dr. Erica?
That truly came out of my clinical practice, and that became flooded with women who were in their over 35 and who had everything. When I mean everything, the education, the house, the car, the career, sometimes a child, but were struggling in finding healthy relationships and maintaining healthy relationships. And it goes back to what I talked about before, that my work with them was really around teaching them how to date, starting with themselves. Like, you can come in and say, well, the reason that I can't find a man is because there are none. And if you believe that, then there's no reason to come and see me or even look for one, because now you're doomed. But there are men. There are great men.
You said there are men.
You have to know, right, there are men. They are there. But starting with yourself and really think about it. No one is taught, most of us are not taught how to date. You get 16 and it's like, can't have a boyfriend until you're 16. I'm from old school. So you can't have a boyfriend until you're 16, and that's just what you're told. No one tells you what things to look for. No one tells you how to sit back and reflect on who you are and what you bring into relationships and how you help to co-create relationships. And so my book, Dating with Purpose, is a workbook, a self-reflective workbook for women to really help them think through not only what they desire in relationship, but who are they in relationship, and how does that impact the person that they are dating. It's written for heterosexual women, so I talk about the men that they're dating. And I think it's really important that we start with ourselves. That's where relationships with anyone starts. It starts with ourselves. So we have to know who we are, what we're taking into relationships, and really do some of that work so that you can kind of assess whether, this guy you met on Tinder is a true potential or not.
Let me ask you this. Can you tell us about your forthcoming book?
So my forthcoming book is called Intimacy Does Not Equal Sex, 180 Activities to Help Couples Connect. It'll be out the middle of March, the middle of next month. And it is a book of just that, 180 activities that covers activities across the 5+1, the 6 types of intimacy, right, that I mentioned: sexual, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, recreational, and physical. So there are activities that couples can do across all of to help build intimacy in each of those areas. And the activities are, some of them are quick that you can just do right now, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Some of them are discussion questions to help you talk through some of these things, sharing your innermost thoughts, feelings, and ideas. And some of them are activities that you might plan, that it might take you, okay, let's talk about what we're going to do in 3 weeks. Let's plan this out. So there are multiple types of activities and different ways that couples can engage in these activities to help them to sustain and to build true intimacy in their relationship.
I'm so glad we had this time. Dr. Erica Holmes. Doc Erica, She has come by and graced us, and we are doing this because Tuesday is Valentine's Day. And besides that, we want to make sure that our love is right and it's on track. So we thank you for all that you are doing. Can you give out your social media handles so people can follow you?
I sure can. I am It's Doc Erica across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So It's Doc Erica. You can find me across most social media. And then my website is D-O-C, Erica with a C. So docerica.com. I can also be found there.
And one quick question. I know we're running out of time, but one quick question. When you see couples, can you tell, Doc, whether they're happy or not? Like if you see them walking in the mall or in the park or something, can you instantly tell?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. That'll make my job a lot easier.
You said just a little bit easier. Thank you for all you do for our community. I truly appreciate you, and I appreciate you joining us today. I wish you well, and happy Valentine's Day early.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, and I wish you a happy and wonderful Valentine's as well.
All right, you all listening audience, I thank you so much for joining us today on this Sunday morning. We'll talk to you again next week, and as always, behold the green and gold.